Numbers. Chapter 32. Verse 1. The Reubenites and Gadites, who had very large herds and flocks, saw that the lands of Jazer and Gilead were suitable for livestock. Verse 2. So they came to Moses and Eleazar the priest and to the leaders of the community, and said. Verse 3. Ataroth, Dibon, Jazer, Nimrah, Heshbon, Elealeh, Sabam, Nebo and Beon. Verse 4. The land the Lord subdued before the people of Israel are suitable for livestock, and your servants have livestock. Verse 5. If we have found favor in your eyes, they said, let this land be given to your servants as our possession. Do not make us cross the Jordan. Verse 6. Moses said to the Gadites and Reubenites, should your fellow Israelites go to war while you sit here? Verse 7. Why do you discourage the Israelites from crossing over into the land the Lord has given them? Verse 8. This is what your fathers did when I sent him from Kadesh Barnea to look over the land. Verse 9. After they went up to the valley of Eshcol and viewed the land, they discouraged the Israelites from entering the land the Lord had given them. Verse 10. The Lord's anger was aroused that day and he swore this oath. Verse 11. Because they have not followed me wholeheartedly, not one of those who were 20 years old or more when they came up out of Egypt will see the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. Verse 12. Not one except Caleb son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite and Joshua son of Nun, for they followed the Lord wholeheartedly. Verse 13. The Lord's anger burned against Israel and he made them wander in the wilderness 40 years, until the whole generation of those who had done evil in his sight was gone. Verse 14. And here you are, a brood of sinners, standing in the place of your fathers and making the Lord even more angry with Israel. Verse 15. If you turn away from following him, he will again leave all this people in the wilderness, and you will be the cause of their destruction. Verse 16. Then they came up to him and said, we would like to build pens here for our livestock and cities for our women and children. Verse 17. But we will arm ourselves for battle and go ahead of the Israelites until we have brought him to their place. Meanwhile our women and children will live in fortified cities, for protection from the inhabitants of the land. Verse 18. We will not return to our homes until each of the Israelites has received their inheritance. Verse 19. We will not receive any inheritance with them on the other side of the Jordan, because our inheritance has come to us on the east side of the Jordan. Verse 20. Then Moses said to them, if you will do this, if you will arm yourselves before the Lord for battle. Verse 21. And if all of you who are armed cross over the Jordan before the Lord until he has driven his enemies out before him. Verse 22. Then when the land is subdued before the Lord, you may return and be free from your obligation to the Lord and to Israel, and this land will be your possession before the Lord. Verse 23. But if you fail to do this, you will be sinning against the Lord, and you may be sure that your sin will find you out. Verse 24. Build cities for your women and children, and pens for your flocks, but do what you have promised. Verse 25. The Gadites and Reubenites said to Moses, we your servants will do as our Lord commands. Verse 26. Our children and wives, our flocks and herds will remain here in the cities of Gilead. Verse 27. But your servants, every man who is armed for battle, will cross over to fight before the Lord, just as our Lord says. Verse 28. Then Moses gave orders about him to Eleazar the priest and Joshua son of Nun and to the family heads of the Israelite tribes. Verse 29. He said to them, if the Gadites and Reubenites, every man armed for battle, cross over the Jordan with you before the Lord. Then when the land is subdued before you, you must give them the land of Gilead as their possession. Verse 30. But if they do not cross over with you armed, they must accept their possession with you in Canaan. Verse 31. The Gadites and Reubenites answered, your servants will do what the Lord has said. Verse 32. We will cross over before the Lord into Canaan armed. But the property we inherit will be on this side of the Jordan. Verse 33. Then Moses gave to the Gadites, the Reubenites and the half-tribe of Manasseh son of Joseph the kingdom of Sihon king of the Amorites and the kingdom of Og king of Bashan, the whole land with its cities and the territory around them. Verse 34. The Gadites built up Dibon, Ataroth, Aroer. Verse 35. Atrath Shaphan, Jazer, Jogbeah. Verse 36. Beth Nimrah and Beth Haran as fortified cities, and built pens for their flocks. Verse 37. And the Reubenites rebuilt Heshbon, Elealeh and Kiriathaim. Verse 38. As well as Nebo and Baal Meon. These names were changed. And Sibmah. They gave names to the cities they rebuilt. Verse 39. The descendants of Machir son of Manasseh went to Gilead, captured it and drove out the Amorites who were there. Verse 40. So Moses gave Gilead to the Machirites, the descendants of Manasseh, and they settled there. Verse 41. Jair, a descendant of Manasseh, captured their settlements and called them Havoth Jair. Verse 42. And Noba captured Kenath and its surrounding settlements and called it Noba after himself.